Hi everyone, I'm Brandon. Welcome to my channel, Books in the Shire. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that got me into reading. Throughout my entire life, I've had like different phases of reading. And I know that's pretty typical, you have phases like children's, middle grade, yada yada. But I mean more so like I would read for a certain amount as a child and then I stopped reading for a while and then I would start reading again and then I would stop reading again. It's always been like intermittent throughout my life. I always loved going to bookstores and libraries and all of that type of stuff, but it's never been something consistent that I've always done. When I was in elementary school, I read two main series, and that was the Geronimo Stilton series, which is basically about a mouse who, he likes to live his cozy life as I think a journalist, but he always gets pulled into these crazy adventures. And then I also read the Pixie Hollow books. I don't own Geronimo Stilton, but I do own some of the Pixie Hollow books because I'm actually currently trying to reread this whole series because I adored it when I was younger. But basically the Pixie Hollow books, each book follows a different fairy based off of like Tinkerbell and all of that. Like most children's books, there's mischief that happens throughout it, but then at the end it's nicely resolved. And you learn like a major life lesson. Those were the two main series that I read as a kid. Specifically with Geronimo Stilton, the one thing I loved about that series is the character Geronimo. He was just very much a homebody. He didn't like to do too many crazy things. He liked to stick to what he knew. And I relate to that a lot, and I think that's kind of why I gravitated towards him as a kid. I think a lot of bookworms can identify with this, where you really want adventure, but you're kind of too scared to go do it. And that's the way I am. That's the way Geronimo is. It's like he was scared of adventure, but whenever he was on it, it was kind of fun. With the Pixie Hollow books, I just loved that each book followed a different character, and so you got to learn so many different things about the Pixie Hollow world, and like about all the different talents that these fairies had. But I liked that only some of the books revolved around Tinkerbell, and sometimes she would show up in other books, but you really got to explore the actual world of Pixie Hollow and like all of these different characters that were so interesting and all the crazy things that would happen to them. Because I'm currently doing my reread, I just read the first three books in the series. The first one follows Tinkerbell, the second one follows Vidya, and the third one follows, I think the character's name is Beck, if you know anything about the Pixie Hollow books. And they were just so fun. Like, definitely the Vidya one so far has been my favorite upon reread. I just really love a bad bitch, and that's who Vidya is as a character, so I just really adore her. And then this is the fourth book, Lily's Pesky Plant, so I'm hoping to start it sometime soon. It's just fun to like revisit it. I just really love these books, so I'm excited to reread them all and kind of reflect and see what my feelings are now as an adult. The next book that has really defined my reading, I didn't actually read it as a kid, like in elementary school. I read it, I think, when I was in middle school during the time where I like didn't read at all. And this book just holds such a special place in my heart because it's just so magical, and it's like, technically it's a middle grade, but it can sometimes verge on adult. Like it's so immaculately written, and the world building, the characterization is all just so wonderful. And to this day, it's probably one of my favorite books ever, but that is Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. I don't know how many people have actually heard of this series. I think a lot of people might have known her. I think it's like the Dragon Rider series. I never read that. Also, you might know The Thief Lord by her, but Inkheart is the book that I actually read by her, and I just adore this book. It's so wonderful, so masterfully created. Like, everything about it is beautiful. I really wouldn't be able to say much about what I love about it other than that the characterization and world building is phenomenal. There's a specific character in here named Eleanor. She is a bookworm who loves to stay at home. Are we seeing a theme here? Like, that's just me. I love Eleanor. She's just a phenomenal character. It's really good. I don't know what I could say about it to, do it justice, because it's just incredible. It will always be a 5-star read for me. It will always be on my shelf. Like, I will never get rid of it. It's just phenomenal. I'd mentioned that after like elementary school, I had stopped reading for a bit, but then when I was in middle school, that's when the big dystopian boom happened. The Hunger Games came out while I was in middle school, like the film, and it was just wild. Everyone obviously was reading the Hunger Games. They were reading everything dystopian basically. And weirdly, I wasn't in that bandwagon, but I did read a dystopian series at that time, and it was not The Hunger Games. But I actually read The Maze Runner instead by James Dashner. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this or read it. There's obviously a film series about it that everyone either likes it or hates it. The films are, I'll get to that. But I picked this up, I was like at Target one day, I think, with my mom, and I saw the cover and I was like, let me like read this first chapter and see what it's about. And honestly, the first chapter in this is really interesting because if you know the story, it's when I believe Thomas is in like the elevator coming up into the maze, and it's like you don't know what's happening, and it was really captivating for me at the time. And because I was so hesitant at the time to read The Hunger Games because of the hype, I was one of those people who was like, oh, I'm never gonna read this, like it's too popular. I kind of regret that now, but that's okay. But I read this instead, and this was incredible. I loved the whole series. Like, I read it really quickly from what I can remember. I think I read the first book and immediately I went to the store and bought the second and third because I had to know what else happened in the world. Really fun for me. I mean, definitely not the best book in the entire world, but I think for me, it was the characters that really made the story. I really didn't care about what was happening with the actual story. I just cared what was happening to the characters. Newt still is my favorite character in this whole series. Like, he's just so precious. I love him. James Dashner did him dirty, and I'm not okay with that. And talking about oh my gosh, the films. The first film was actually pretty decent. From when it first came out, that was probably one of the best, like, book to film adaptations I had seen, because I hadn't read a lot of books that became films, so it was really good in my mind. And I still think to this day it's like a pretty decent film. It's obviously not the best, but it was decent. But then they just, it got real bad, and the death cure was just burning garbage. But I was all about like Tumblr, the Maze Runner Tumblr stuff. Like, that was my whole Tumblr page, was all of that. At one point I had Newt as like my Tumblr icon. My theme was like based around the Maze Runner. I was one of those people, and I was just in love, and it just really impacted me as a reader at the time. And then another book that I read around the same time isn't dystopian, but the film came out during the dystopian phase, I guess you could say. That is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. I will die on the hill that the film is better than the TV show. That TV show is burning garbage. Like, none of the actors can act, except for, I do like the guy who plays Simon. He's pretty chill, okay? He's chill. But like, everything else about that is bad. I just, But that's besides the point. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this book. I read City of Bones, I think, right before the movie came out, because I was like, no, I have to read the book before the film. And I was in love with this book, definitely upon rereading it. Not the greatest, kind of bad. Don't love the incest plot, but like, it was so fun for me as a kid, because this is like the first YA I think I had ever really read, because I was probably 12 when I read it. Okay, well, I did read Twilight when I was like 10, but I didn't understand anything because I was 10. You know, it's fine, it's fine. But yeah, this is like one of the first real YA books that I had read that actually tackled more young adult topics, such as like dating and like, I guess like running away from your parents, kind of doing your own thing, being a little bit rebellious. I just really love the way Cassandra Clare like builds her worlds. It's very descriptive and immersive for me as a reader. I know like some people might not enjoy how she writes, but for me, still to this day, I still really get immersed in the series, despite me not like knowing it all too well, because I've only read the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments. Like, I can still always feel nostalgia whenever I pick up a new book in the series, because it's something so familiar to me. The next book that really shaped my reading is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This was my first exposure to Tolkien's work. I hadn't seen the Lord of the Rings films before, and I had read this just before the Hobbit movie came out. And it was just really impactful. I think the simplicity of it was just like needed for me at the time. I was a freshman in high school, like my whole world was new. So I appreciated that this was something that like I didn't really have to think much about, but I still really enjoyed it. I really connected with Bilbo. Recurring theme of me being a homebody who likes adventure but can't do it because I'm scared, so I read books. That's what Bilbo is. So I just really connected with him. A lot of the characters in this book aren't really fleshed out well, except for like Bilbo, Gandalf, and maybe Thorin. Like, They aren't really well done because it is a kid's book, so you definitely have kind of toned down, simple writing and simple characters, but I think that's like something that's nice about this book is it's not super like heavy like Lord of the Rings is. I've only read the first Lord of the Rings book, and even that was like a difficult story to get through for me, and I had seen the movies by that point when I tried reading it. This just really impacted me. Also too, obviously my channel name is Books in the Shire, based off of the Shire from the Hobbit. I just really love this book. It can do no wrong in my eyes, even though I know there are issues with it. I really enjoyed too like the first Hobbit film that came out, An Unexpected Journey. That just is so good. Probably my favorite like Tolkien verse film. Despite Lord of the Rings being really great films, I just really loved the first Hobbit movie. But then similar to the Maze Runner, it went downhill. And I'm not surprised because the last movie was just a cash grab. The next two books that I have kind of go hand in hand because I read them the same year of high school. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. But that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley and Cyrano de Bergerac. I could not tell you the author of that book, and I don't have it because I can't find a nice copy that I want. Frankenstein, if you don't know what it's about a scientist who is trying to recreate life, so he creates a monster who just wants to be loved, which is so relatable. Like, Frankenstein is the real villain. Frankenstein's monster is a precious being who just wants love and to enjoy life, but Frankenstein is just a little asshole who's like, no, you can't have that, so fuck Frankenstein. But this was like my first classic I think I ever read, because I'm gonna be straight up, in high school I did not read the books that we were supposed to read. So this was one of the only ones I actually read, and it really stuck with me. Like, I don't mind Shelley's really descriptive writing. Like, I could listen to her write about a tree for 5 pages and I would be content. I don't know, just something about it, just it flowed well. Despite it being overly descriptive, it was really quick for me to read and I just really connected with it. I too just want to be loved by like Frankenstein's monster, so he's just a precious baby and I love him. With Cyrano, like the thing that I loved about it was just like the cute romance elements to it, because if you don't know what Cyrano de Bergerac is, basically our main character Cyrano is like considered ugly because he has a very like big nose. But he's a very like poetic and beautiful writer, and his friend is trying to fall in love with this woman, but his friend isn't a very good talker. Like, he's not eloquent or anything like that. So Cyrano agrees to write down what his friend should say to this woman. And so basically the woman starts falling in love with this man that she's never seen solely because of his words, but it's all actually Cyrano's words and not the friend's who's saying it. It's just like a really cute story. It's a really cute love story about how like just because you have some features that may not be the best doesn't mean you're an ugly person, doesn't mean you're not deserving of love and everything. And it was just really sweet. It's a play, so it was kind of like, it's quick to get through. It's very dialogue heavy because it's a play. Cyrano is a precious baby who deserves to be protected. I have two more books that really impacted my reading. After Cyrano and Frankenstein, I really didn't read in high school. I did read Miss Peregrine's, but I wasn't a fan of that, but that has nothing to do with this. The book that like kind of launched me back into reading a bit, there's two, but I'll talk about one first. That is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I think I found this book like either my senior year of high school or my freshman year of college, and I was just in love. Like, I just loved the characters. I love the way Bardugo writes the world. I really liked it. I liked the inspiration with like the Russian vibes and theme. The thing that really sold me on these books is the magic system. I really like the Grisha magic system. It's not like groundbreaking, but I just think I like how Bardugo separated it out and kind of explained each individual's like capabilities through their magic. Not just because someone is like a fabricator doesn't mean that two fabricators are the same. They have different, you know, kind of specialties, I guess you could say. But I really liked that. I read this book really quickly, probably in like 2 days, and I hadn't read a book in years. So that was like astounding for me. And so I obviously like had to finish the series. I did read the second book. What's the second book? Siege and Storm. I always get that mixed up with another book that has a similar title. But I read Siege and Storm probably like a month or so after I read this, but I never read Ruin and Rising. So last year, in preparation for the show, I decided to reread the series. Upon reread, it's definitely not my favorite series in the world, but I still really love it, and it still really is grounded in my reading history, I guess you could say. It launched me back into reading. Like, it made me want to go back to bookstores and pick up books to read and find new series that I love. So this one definitely is like special in relaunching my love for reading. The last book that I have that really like set in stone that I want to keep reading all the time is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. I picked this up, I think, the summer of like 2018. I don't know. I was traveling with my mom and my sister, and I wanted a book to read on the plane because I had been traveling a lot. I was just in like Ireland because I was studying abroad, and then I was in Boston and I was coming back home. So I had been traveling a lot, and I was just kind of sick of watching TV on planes. So I wanted a book, and my mom was like, oh, here, just find something on Amazon that you could read. And this was an audiobook that was free. So I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll pick it up. And I was just in love with this audiobook. I think the plane ride was probably like 4 hours, and I listened to it for the whole 4 hours because I was just in love. Like, I love the dual timelines, and Maureen Johnson's writing was just really fun for me. I was never like, oh, this is kind of boring. It just was like, go, 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 and I really loved it. And because of that, this is the reason I started my Bookstagram, because I started kind of looking up this book more, started, you know, going back on Goodreads, because I've had a Goodreads since like 2013, but I just like never used it. And so this book, I was like, you know what, let's do Goodreads again. Let's actually start getting back into reading fully. And so that's what I did. So I started my Bookstagram. I think one of my first posts, it's deleted now, but I think one of my first posts was Truly Devious. Honestly, this book propelled me into where I am today with my reading, and I'm just so grateful because I just love this book. I love this series, and I hope Maureen Johnson keeps writing more, because like I was shocked when she announced The Box in the Woods, because I was like, I thought it was just going to be a trilogy. So I really hope she writes more similar like standalones to The Box in the Woods, so that like we can keep going with these mysteries. Or if she wants to write a new mystery series, I'm so down for that as well. But it's just so beautifully crafted. I love it. I just can't say enough about it. Those are all the books that like have made a big impact on my reading throughout the years. Definitely some have had more impacts than others, but I truly love all of these books. They all have a special place in my heart. They really built my reading profile and how I read to this day. There's definitely some commonalities, such as, you know, the like shy, introverted person who loves to stay home but really wants adventure. Like, I relate to that so much. That's why I read. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to see more, please subscribe. Do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, all that fun jazz. But thank you so much for watching.